Hi guys, Happy New Year to everybody. I think it's been probably close to a month since I've put a video together. It's been obviously very busy time of year. And we're back in lockdown where I am, so the kids are now doing online school. And that's a little crazy with 3 children, 3 different schedules. And anyway, I was just saying to somebody that, you know what? We'll get it all figured out just in time for them to go back to school. I know it was supposed to be 1 week of them doing online school, and then of course on Friday they announced that there's another 2 weeks. I am praying that after that they'll be back at school for their sakes, not just mine. It's just, anyway. God is good and God is greater, and that's what I keep trusting in. And I know that God knew that this would happen, so he has provision for it. I don't have to get all frazzled about trying to handle a business and school and now 3 kids schooling. I'm giving it up to God, and I'm trusting that as long as by the end of this year my kindergartner knows how to read a little bit, then it's a success. The other 2 that are older, I'm just giving it over to God. Anyway, I have a lot to share. So this will probably end up being 2 videos because I decided, I wrote notes, but I only got through the backstory before the message of what I wanted to share, which is going to be on, you know, the perception of lack and then the power of choice, really, and focus. But I wanted to talk a little bit of how what kind of brought me to talk about this. So I get a lot of clients who, most clients, who come to me and ask, you know, is my situation either too severe, and they're doubting that they can do it, either that it'll work for them, brain retraining will work for them, or that they can do it because there's something about their specific set of symptoms that makes their situation the worst. And I would say that there's kind of like 3 categories of these people, of all of us. And so it's interesting because I've gone through all 3 of those different stages. So I have the ability to compare the 3 and say that I don't think that any one of them is the worst. I think they all have a case for being the worst. But I think that because of, okay, just an example. So say somebody who presents from their illness with predominantly psychiatric symptoms, that they are concerned that they can't do this because they just don't have a brain, or they don't have they're not in their right mind. Or then there's someone who is so incapacitated in bed, who is so weak, and the exertion of even trying to think or do the things that they're being told they need to do is too much for them, and so it's not going to work. Or the people whose, you know, sensitivities are so bad that they're essentially shut off from the world, and they don't see a way of healing without being able to, I guess, get out into the world more. Or eat, for example. Okay, so I thought it would be helpful just to actually, this video is just mostly going to be me telling you kind of some of the different types of stages that I went through in order to give you a sense of, because a lot of people say they connect to a part of my story. And I know that the testimony put out by DNRS very much focuses on my environmental sensitivities, which was only the very end of my journey. Yes, severe, But there are other very severe things that I went through that are not really covered in that. And then there's the not so severe phases that were still really bad. But anyway, so I thought I would just give an overview. And hopefully there's something that can be drawn out of this. And then I'll probably make another message after this that talks about kind of connecting this to that perception of lack and the focus of choice. And anyway, there'll be a little more, and hopefully I get everything that I learned through the Word of God and the Holy Spirit, so it'll very much have that flavor to it. All right, so my history, these are not going to go in chronological order. They kind of do, but then there's like periods of time where I would go from one to the other to another and back, and then I was all over the place for years. So, okay, so the first kind of, I don't know, let's just call them presentations or manifestations, I don't know, or just where I was at in my journey, would be that time when I was, had a really low immune system. Now, there's a lot of overlap too. So, but these would be kind of like the main highlights. There's a lot of overlap, so it's not like, while I say at this one phase I had a low immune system, the other times I didn't, but it was just what was more predominant to me as an issue, I guess. Okay, so low immune system, I felt like someone could cough and I would get an infection. That was actually very common throughout most of my journey. A lot of pain and digestive issues that were predominant. Just that overall just ick, and just like trying to keep going through life with whatever limitations I guess I had. There was the extreme, this was usually after like a crash, the 24/7 bedridden, like a major, like after the marathon in 2007, or after my daughter was born, and then 2 months later with the mold. There's other times too, but yeah, many after that. But the being 24/7 bedridden, that 5-alarm fire going on in the body and brain, severe, cognitive impairment, and lifeless, just, the simulation of just not even being able to speak, someone trying to ask me a question in bed, just I couldn't have my children around me. I was lifeless. And then trying to come out of that, feeling like, okay, I think I'm getting a little bit better, and pushing myself to get out of bed and say eat could put me right back down there again. There was the times where I was out of bed. I was the insomniac, wired but tired. Now, doesn't mean that during these other phases, especially the one right before, I was still having insomnia. It wasn't that I wasn't. And a lot of this was still going on, the ones I'm about to talk about in the other phase. Wired but tired, hormonal mess, drenching night sweats, drenched, just completely drenched. But then I would be cold all day. There was nothing that could warm me up. Blue lips from exertion, a lot of push crash, diarrhea, nausea, the hangovers that I would have to will myself out of bed just to it's like I had to push that veil out of the way, or darkness, or just rip the chains off or break the chains off. But what I was doing is I was pushing myself into adrenaline in order to get some functionality. And then I just kind of lived in that cycle, and I just kept it was like my whole nervous system I was walking on eggshells all the time. Okay, so somewhere in between those two, because I did work or go to school during that phase a lot, the one I just mentioned. The in between that would have been when I was mostly housebound, and the MCAS, the POTS, the fibromyalgia, especially I was very classic ME/CFS with all of the neurological, a lot of that stuff that was in there, paresthesias, all that was very pronounced. Again, I was out of bed more, resting, you know, in the afternoon, getting out of bed late, going to bed early, and just like a lot of that. But I'd be up and I'd be trying to do things. I still have people taking care of my kids, to help out. My husband at the time was, he would work, but he would come home and literally to a gong show, and he would spend his whole evening just picking up the pieces. And he was the one. He was making the kids lunches. He was doing everything, and he did all the laundry. He did all the house cleaning. He did everything. And I did try to feed the kids. That was about it. And poor guy was overwhelmed. So it was during that time, yeah, so it would be like I was like a space cadet. I couldn't organize my brain. I couldn't remember words. I couldn't walk straight. It was like I was walking lopsided, or like I was limping. And like, I remember working with my functional neurologist. He's like, "You look fine." I'm like, "No, but there's something wrong." And yeah, so there was something else I wanted to say in that stage. Yeah, I couldn't hold a conversation. Like, if somebody wanted to have a conversation with me, it was like, I'm done. Like, my brain I was out of this world. Breaking things constantly, walking into things, cutting myself, hurting myself all the time, just from lack of coordination. And I just constantly falling a lot. Just, you know what? It was almost like I felt like I had Alzheimer's, like my brain was deteriorating so rapidly. Yeah. Okay. These are going to kind of overlap, but, you know, because the avoidance of life, obviously, as you're going through this and you're getting progressively more sick, you're avoiding more of your life, right? When you can't get out of bed, you're avoiding pretty much everything. Like in terms of exertion. What was I going to say, though, about this? I was going to say that, yeah, the extreme avoidance, though, when that began, you know, moving out of my house and then moving different homes and moving into the desert and avoiding all kinds of everything, specifically, you know, the foods that got more extreme with my avoidance became more extreme in my environment. Those were just the final straws in all of this. The reality was that, as I've gone through this journey, that it's the internal struggles inside of me that had never really been dealt with, unable to really cope with everyday life, were the bigger issues in the end, the people and circumstances and my perception of everything. And just, there's so much more I could say about this, but I didn't know it at the time. So but avoiding foods and environments, like those were the last straw. They were part of it, but in the end, I know now that it was like this much compared to just avoiding life. So when I was out in the desert, I was not just avoiding environmental stressors, and obviously it wasn't even working. It worked a certain amount. I will give it credit, and there were times where I saw some big gains in my extreme avoidance, but I was avoiding life. Everything in life. Okay, so then there's so let's talk about hopelessness. So, you know, through most of my journey, I tried to keep my hope up. The only thing that kept my hope up was that there was always some new thing that I could try that I hadn't tried yet. But then I would get, you know, especially as I would start to see some improvement with something, it's like, yes, we're onto something. Like really valid, tangible, like improvement. And then, when that would start to fail or not, you know, I couldn't get any further, I was just stuck or something, like the hopelessness started to grow. So especially when you're spending all kinds of money and you're being told like this is your problem, and it seems to make sense. Like my CIRS doctor, like that was the last vestige of hope for my husband when we went to New Hampshire and he was there, because he didn't really go to any of my appointments. It was just me. And he did early on, I shouldn't say that, but you know, once life got crazy with kids and the whole thing was just a nightmare, it was just me really, or my mom, I guess. And anyway, so he was in New Hampshire with me, and like after I filled out their sheet when you're there, it was like 78 of I don't know how many symptoms I had from CIRS, and we spoke with her, and that was a moment of hope for him, because he was like, oh my gosh, we have an answer, like we can actually get out of this. And so that really helped us for a little bit, and me too. But then when that wasn't, you know, I don't want to say it backfired, but it just didn't do what we thought it was going to do, that then I was crushed completely, because I had nowhere else to turn, I thought. And so that's when hopelessness really took over in me. But I don't know if I said this in one of my other videos. I was not planning on saying this, but just to give him credit. I don't know why I'm getting emotional right now. I've been through this, I'm over it, but sometimes it just hits you. I remember he came home, okay, to collect myself. He came home early from work one day. I might have shared this already. And I was laying on the couch, because I was like, I don't want to live anymore. I was basically texting him, and I was just I might have been on the phone even before that, bawling my eyes out. And I was not doing that very often. Like, that was not me. And I just was like, I'm done. Like, I want to give up. Like, I just want to give up. And he said to me, he said, okay, I might have said this before, and it probably wasn't emotional like this. He just said, you know, just don't ever give up, and that'll be enough for me. And it hit me, because I was like, wow, that's amazing that my husband loves me that much, that he's just saying that as long as I don't give up, that he's here for me, you know, like that's all I have to do. That I held on to that for a long time, and actually I brought that up when he was leaving me. I said, you said I just don't need to give up. But anyway, he's an amazing man, awesome man. I don't speak negatively. I just know that our trauma was, at some point, you know, there's a breaking point for everybody. Okay, so there was that, but the actual suicidality that is, you know, fear gone to seed is hopelessness, and suicidality, I mean, it's all from fear and hopelessness. And that, for me, it was extreme, but it was only for a short period of time. So the severe psychiatric stuff, like I didn't really experience that for most of my journey. But then towards the end, when I was in the desert, it came on it seemed like out of nowhere. I thought I was reacting to toxins or EMFs, because that's where my focus was, and what I've been learning, what I was being told by other people who had these experiences, and it seemed to make sense with and I'm not saying that they weren't involved. I know that I had real, genuine sensitivities to things, but I think what happened was because of my trauma. I was in thousands of miles from my children. Don't know when I'm ever I have nothing left in my life. Like I'm like, I can't provide for myself. I have no way of getting closer to my children unless I get better. My husband left me. Like, what am I gonna do? And as that, just obviously you're alone a lot, and you're thinking these things, and no one can help you. I had nowhere to turn. So I thought that you know, so at a reaction, it was like it was like my trauma. It's like as soon as I would start to have another reaction, or a certain level of a reaction, it's like now there's that association in there of essentially hopelessness. And I would never say I actually feared this stuff. Like, I didn't consciously fear, for the most part anyways, my symptoms, or up to a certain point. I really didn't fear them. I feared never getting better, I guess. I had a lot of fear in me, but it wasn't like a I was always trying to push through it. I was always trying to I was trying to run from the fear. Maybe I was afraid, but I wouldn't acknowledge it. But anyway, yeah, so I think it was it was like that wiring in my brain, like as I would spiral, it would spiral me down as my brain was now like, it was just the chains, like it was just the gravity of it all that would just pull me down to this place of, it's like a conditioned response of frustration and anger and victimization and hopelessness, and intertwined now with like with an environmental stressor. And I mean, that would take me down to being suicidal. And I mean, it also led to complete numbness and just like gone from the world. Like I was so gone. And that's when things felt finally like really scary. And yeah, like bipolar like episodes. So okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about severe reactions as well. So I feel like that's the journey that's kind of presented in my testimony, but I'm going to walk you through quickly. I put some dates here to help you understand. So say I started getting sick in 2003-ish. Now I look back, as probably actually just kind of freshman year, because I know that I'm going to leave that for my next video, because I think that's an important piece. Oh, I know for sure 2000, I was already sick, but 2007, the Boston Marathon, like there was a severe reaction to exertion. In 2007, again, when we decided I was the one that made the call. We had planned to go and volunteer in Venezuela, my husband and I, and I was like, we're going anyway. I don't care how sick I am, which good and bad. Anyway, there were reactions that I had there. Well, one, to travel, and then two, to the place that we got into when we first got there. Was the first time my face just like blew up. We assumed that it was mold. Actually, he assumed it was mold, and we moved. But I was really sick for a long time again. I was sick the whole time, but I was really sick, like in bed sick, like couldn't. I'm very, very ill. Okay, so then I skip all the way, because I'm only talking about like really severe reactions. So 2015 was my house, and that was, I should put with that though, was the labor of my third child, which was extreme, because I think I said before, maybe in one of my videos, how I went through natural labor. I wouldn't do any drugs, and they put her on my chest, and I couldn't hold her. I couldn't even speak the words to say I don't have the energy to hold her, and I couldn't feel any love whatsoever. I mean, I had 2 children before I knew what it was like to bring a child into the world. I couldn't feel anything. So, but then 2 months later was when they opened up the house to remediate. Obviously, this was again, straw that broke the camel's back. But when they opened up the walls to remediate, after we had found that there had been this massive water damage, that's just been water pouring out thousands of gallons. I think I told that story before. That's when they opened the walls up. That's when that's when tinnitus went crazy. I lost my hearing my 1 year. I started vomiting, and that was what started like a really, really bad downward spiral. During that time, so what I'm not including are things like so during that time afterwards, I had a bad reaction. Not bad, it was a reaction to Biohack when I had pneumonia. Like I was very bedridden at that point, and so I mean they took me off of it, but that's the first time I'd really reacted to any medication. But I wouldn't include things like that in all of this, because if so, I would be here forever. So then there was 2017, my mom's basement I was living in. I moved out of my house to test this out, because working with a functional neurologist, whole nother story, but we deduced that like this is something I should at least try. And after starting some, I guess you would call them natural medications. I don't even know. I guess they're, anyway, some like biofilm busters and some binders and stuff. once I got out of my house, I was starting to get some more energy and I was starting to see some improvements. And then my mom noticed, I might have told this story already. So basically black mold in her basement that they discovered a lot of it. Like I have like a whole wall that was torn apart because of a foundation crack that had been there for a long time. And I guess every winter when the thaw, the snow would melt, that's when, and that's what happened. It was in the spring, and then the water would pour in. And so my mom had noticed it the year before. They thought it had to do with the hot tub, and they actually got the line replaced because that's what they thought it was. So it wasn't, it was the foundation. And anyway, so my husband actually was the one that like did all the work. He was amazing. Like he just was trying to do anything he could. And I left, and I said, I can't, like I said, because they're like, we got to open the wall up. I'm like, you guys open up the wall. I'm like what's going to happen to me? Like, because I knew now that there was a connection between what had happened when they opened up the walls in our house in 2015. And I said, okay, well, I'll just go to a hotel and then I'll come back. And so we did that, and I thought everything was gonna be fine. Consciously, I was like, no, this is fine, this is fine, this is fine. And I was like, I'll be good. And then within a couple of days, I was like, whoa, things are starting to go downhill. But now I know that, yes, while maybe that was true, that it actually was, whether it was or not, I don't know. About the environment, it very much took me down into a spiral of, I now had to emergency evacuate, essentially, I went and lived with his aunt and uncle, and I was down again to points where I thought I was dying. Like I couldn't, like I remember trying to stand a shower and just collapsing, and like so much writhing in pain. And I mean, I would come out of it eventually, but I don't know how, a week or something, but that would be like what I would consider a severe reaction. So then in between 2017 and 2018, so once I moved out and now I was in this beautiful home, like just amazing environment. I was slowly getting better, and I was doing some of the protocols with the shoemaker protocol and stuff, and I was doing a lot of up and down. And so I thought they were like, oh, it must have been I went somewhere and then I reacted, or that Aaron, my ex, like brought something from the house and that's why now I'm worse or something. Unsure, but I don't know if any of them, I would never label any of them severe the way that happened with my mom's or my house. So then 2018, because I left for the desert to do a mold sabbatical for 3 months, and I didn't have any severe reactions, because in the mold avoiders world, they're like, you need to get unmasked and then you can start to know what it is that you're actually reacting to. When you're masked, you just don't know. And I'm like, now I understand that no, that's not the case, that it's actually that I became sensitive to these things. My brain now tagged them as a threat, whereas they weren't before. But it doesn't mean that now I'm sicker. Like I was very sick before, but I wasn't sensitive to these things in this way. So I came back from that 3-month period. I had seen like awesome changes with my sleep and with my overall, I would say my digestive system and my energy were probably the 3 main things that changed. But by the time I came back, actually, I was not in good shape. There were some things that happened, and I lived outside. We still had our farmhouse, and I just lived in a tent, literally got a porta-john put on our property, and I lived out there for a month until I was ready to get my own, month and a half maybe, until I was ready to get my own place. I really thought I could do it, because I mean, I wasn't amazing, but things really had like gotten, like I was having this like high, I guess, of like, all right, like I can do this. And I got a townhouse. I was only 5 years old, and I thought it was fine. And I really do think it was fine. I don't think it was the townhouse. But what happened was I was like going up and down, really just trying to still get through the day and survive. And I was not well enough to work still. I was just trying to manage my health and do what I could with my kids. And then all of a sudden, because I didn't get a mattress for a while, because probably about a month after I lived there, I finally got a bed. And it was it wasn't off gas. It was from Wayfair. You know, came all wrapped up. I didn't have MCS at this point, and not to my knowledge. And all of a sudden, it was like, boom! Like it took me down hard, and I was so sick. Again, that 24/7 flu, just all kinds of things I've already listed, you know, were just like turned on. Yeah, it was like a flood of stress hormones, I guess. And then my doctor, my functional neurologist, he was the only one that I would even consider working with anymore, because he at least like listened to me, and he was trying so hard to believe me. And I think in the end he did, because he was like, all you can really do is go back to the desert. And I was like, ugh. But anyway, he put me on a liver detox protocol, and it was like a month long, and you start off really little. And the first dose took me down to being unable to speak, like incapacitated to the max. And man, it was brutal. And so those two things were, again, some pretty severe reactions. But then after that, I was bedridden because I refused to believe that it was in my environment. And I laid in my bed, and all my labs are coming back with some things here and there with your liver and this and that, but nothing that's like signifies why I'm so sick. And I lost 10 pounds in a week. I just, and they had done everything to my environment. People had come in. We have done everything you possibly could to make my bedroom a sanctuary. Obviously, I had a different bed now, and we had, what's it called when you do the UV light? I forget, ozoned it, not UV light. I had ozoned it. I'd done a couple times. I mean, you name it. And I finally, I remember laying there, and I couldn't even, my mom was taking care of the kids all the time, but then she would leave me at night, and the kids would stay, and I couldn't get out of bed. And I remember I didn't have the strength to say, Mom, like, you can't leave them with me. But I was like, it's okay, like, they'll be okay, and she'll be back in the morning. And one night, my son Colton came in, because he was the one that had a lot of health issues and a lot of anxiety, and he just came in, and he's like crying that he had a nightmare. And like, my kids couldn't come in my room, like, and he's crying, and my response was just like obviously, because now I'm like, I've been woken up, like my body's like on fire. I just told him to go back to bed, and I got mad at him, and I remember he wailed, and I said, like, he basically wanted me to like come into bed with him, and he just wailed, and I just was so angry, and just like basically yelled at him to go back to bed. Like, worst mother of the year award. It was pretty bad. So anyway, I finally protested long enough, and then I said, fine, I will move out on my balcony. And I put my cot out there. I got my energy up to just get myself on my cot. And within like maybe a day and a half, 2 days, I was up walking around. I could walk, take my daughter for a half-hour walk. And I was like, okay, what's going on? But then I started to have severe reactions to everything. I would go into my house, and it was like face on fire, massive migraine, like I'm gonna vomit. Like it was insane. I started to react to, because our kids were still going back and forth between my ex and I, and he was still at the farmhouse. And so every time they would come and they would decontaminate, and before I would go near them. And, but I was doing a little bit better, because I've been spending so much time outside, that she came. I just wanted to hug her, my daughter. I think she was 2 or 3 at the time. And I hugged her, and immediately my body started to like fall apart. And I was like, what the heck? So I immediately got us both in the shower and decontaminated, and it was like, okay, now I'm okay. Man, so many more stories I could tell, but like things were radiating at me. A woman in a fur coat, like I was like, get away, lady. Like, a box, it was like a vacuum that I had ordered, and it was this box, it was literally like radiating at me. Yeah, so things were not good. And I won't go through all the stories, but when I got to the desert, which was like I don't know. I had to leave. I had to flee. And I'm sure I've told that story. As the weather was getting too cold in Canada, and I was living in my mother's garden shed for a few days there. Maybe more than a few days. I don't remember how long it was. My reactions, I just started to react to everything and every place, and to EMFs and to you name it. I was just, and that's where my world got smaller to the point where now here I am alone up a canyon in the wilderness, not even on the grid. And I'm laying outside on a cot and I can't even put anything near my face, even though it's freezing outside because it's the winter, and I sleep with a paper towel roll as my pillow, and every day I take a few of the paper towels off because I'm believing at this point that my body is emptying toxins so much that that's why I'm reacting to this stuff. So I was like changing sleeping bags. I was showering. Well, every day I was most days showering. If the worst case would just baby wipes and whatever, but I had just like sleeping like this, and man, crazy. And then I even started to react to things that were okay before. Like I had been on THC, sublingual THC, for probably a year and a half for my insomnia, and it was so good for the most part. Always. Like it really helped with my sleep, and all of a sudden I just started having some major reactions. Actually, it happened once before and I kind of ignored it. It was really bad, but they became like hallucinogenic, like severe pain and torturous experiences as I was stoned. And I remember rocking the desert there alone, thinking I was dying. And I just got out of I got up and then I sat on this rock away from everything. And I remember just rocking back and forth, just soothing just rubbing my head. It's okay. And I was just like, and I would just do this over and over again. It was like I was possessed by something. I wasn't, but that's what it felt like. And yeah, so those are some of my severe reactions to kind of end my story of everything. And so I'm just making sure I said what I wanted to say. Oh yeah, mast cell reactions to just touching a box or temperature changes with water. My food sensitivities all of a sudden overnight just spiraled. It was like almost anything I ate, and the staples that I was eating on this new diet, I kept, I had a very different diet out in the desert than I did at home. Was where I was losing those foods. Okay. So I go back to what was the worst. I wrote here, I honestly don't think I can say any one of these is the worst. And by the worst, the three ones I would consider are the extremely bedridden incapacitation, not just like weakness or lack of energy, but just, it's even mental. It's everything. There's that. I guess I didn't add in the extreme pain, but that kind of goes, I think, with a lot of these. So the suicidality, and the numbness, would be the other extreme, or the extreme sensitivities and reactions to everything. And so I get people with these three. They tend to be more just in like one camp than the other. Not always, but it's interesting that I went through all of them at different stages. So I'm not claiming I had the most suffering at all. I think what I'm trying to say is that I just was exposed to these different types, I guess, of severe experiences. Other people experienced, some of these for longer than I did. I experienced them for, since mine changed a lot, I experienced them for less time. So I would say they, again, all have a case for being the worst. So, but the point that I wanted to make is that when we're experiencing one of them, we tend to believe that our misery is the worst. Because I remember going through this, and before I had the extreme sensitivities, I was like, well, that's not as bad. I'd rather have that than what I have right now, because then I'd still be out, okay sometimes. It wouldn't be 24/7, and I would just have these reactions, and it sounds like they're more functional and able to do more and get out more. And so I kind of envied them in a way. And then once I had the severe reactions, I remember being like, man, it'd almost be better just to be back home in bed, because I don't know whenever this is going to happen to me. I can't go anywhere. I'm stuck. But I was functional in other ways, right? And then the suicidality, you have physical capacities that to walk, to eat, to have some energy. I'm not saying always, but so I guess my point is that it's like we get into this misery that this is the worst, and I can't do this because I don't have this that somebody else had when they were able to heal. Like, they were able to get out of their bedroom and go and see other things and be with people, or and then, like I said before, with the suicidality, it's like, well, like, I don't have my brain. But my point is that we magnify what we don't have, and we're not remembering or grateful for what we do have. And I mean, this goes for everybody in the world, not just these sick people who've gone through these journeys. I mean, I use the example all the time now. Like, I cut my finger and I have to wear a Band-Aid, and then I get really annoyed because I'm like trying to cut vegetables or, wash my hands, and now I'm like, I have to avoid this Band-Aid's getting all dirty, and like, anyway, it's like my thumb or my finger is like not really that functional, and I get annoyed, and I'm like, really, Bria? Like, I'm like, I don't thank God for the fact that I have 10 working fingers when they're functional, but as soon as I have and lack, I'm so focused on I just need my finger to, like, this to be done and not have to wear a Band-Aid or whatever. And so that's just a very small thing, I know, and it's trivial, but it's just to kind of point out that we have to shift our focus. And that's what I wanted to talk about in the next video. This took me over 40 minutes to share. So it's getting shared. I'm not refilming it because I got things to do. And at some point, I will get to making a video. I might write some notes and do it now. We'll see. About what I wanted to share about lack, perception of lack, and what that's done in our lives, and how to get out of it and change our focus, and some practical tips as well with all that, because I know so much of my coaching is practical, because you can read and listen to teachers and this and that all you want, but to have the practical how-to is really vital. So hopefully I'll get some of that too. And thanks for watching.